All right, welcome. With AI, the hype is absolutely massive, but so are the fears. So, what are the experts actually worried about? Today, we're going to unpack a really fascinating study that maps the entire landscape of AI risk research. We're going to find out what's getting all the attention and what critical dangers might be getting left behind.
Look, we all hear about AI's incredible potential, right? It could solve some of our most complex problems, drive unbelievable innovation. But that potential, it comes with some serious risks. And that brings us to this huge question, one that everyone, from researchers to governments, you and me, is grappling with right now.
And it really is this classic double-edged sword. On one side, you've got incredible efficiency, new solutions we've only dreamed of. But on the other, you open up a whole new can of worms. Biased algorithms making unfair decisions, huge privacy breaches, the wild spread of misinformation, not to mention major security threats. So how do we even begin to get a handle on all this? Well, to understand the risks, a couple of researchers did something really clever. They decided to first understand the research itself. They basically analyzed the analysts to see where the global conversation is actually going. So the guide we're following here is a 2025 paper from Adelaide Bernardelli and Paolo Giudici. And what they did was use this powerful technique to create a kind of bird's eye view of the entire AI risk landscape. The tool they used for this is called Bibliometric Analysis. You can think of it like detective work, but for science. Instead of looking for clues at a crime scene, you're analyzing academic papers, keywords, and author connections to map out an entire field of study and find all the hidden patterns. And their approach was incredibly thorough. I mean, look at this. They followed a super rigorous multi-step process, from picking the right database to carefully analyzing all the keywords and themes. Now, you don't need to memorize the steps. The big deal here is that this systematic approach is what makes their final map so reliable and, well, so insightful. So let's get to their findings and see what this whole investigation actually uncovered. Because the data, it tells a very clear story about a field that isn't just growing, it is absolutely exploding. So after all that careful filtering, what were they left with? Just this, 129 key documents. These are basically the foundational papers published between 2015 and 2025 that define the entire field of AI risk research. But here's where it gets really interesting. Look at this trend. From 2015 to 2022, research was kind of slow and steady. Then, bam, in 2023, it tripled. And in 2024, it nearly doubled again. This shows an incredible explosion of academic interest, right around the time tools like generative AI went totally mainstream. And this boom isn't just happening in one little corner of the world. It is a truly global conversation. Yeah, the US leads in the sheer number of publications, but the real story here is collaboration. You've got countries like China, Italy, and Germany as major players, and get this, over a quarter of all the papers involved authors teaming up across international borders. So when you boil it all down, what are all these researchers actually talking about? Well, by analyzing the most common keywords, the study found 4 themes right at the heart of the discussion: ethics, trust, responsibility, and governance. That tells us the conversation is moving past just the techie problems and into the big social and regulatory challenges. Okay, so we've got these big themes, but how do they all connect? Are they all part of one big unified conversation, or are we looking at a bunch of separate discussions happening in parallel? This is where the analysis gets really clever and shows us the true structure of the field. The researchers created what they call a thematic map, and it led them to a really crucial insight. They found that the field of AI risk is, and this is their word, highly fragmented. What that means is you've got different research communities working on different pieces of the puzzle, but they're not always connecting their work. And this map, summarized right here, just brilliantly illustrates that fragmentation. It sorts all the topics into 4 key types, showing us what's central to the conversation, what's foundational, and what's kind of stuck off in its own specialized silo. But the most revealing category is that last one, emerging themes. And here's the real punchline. Guess what falls into that emerging category? Topics we hear about all the time in the news, like AI fairness and AI education. The map shows they're still on the fringe of the academic research world. There is a clear gap between major societal concerns and what the research community is focused on. So, what's the big takeaway from all this detective work? Well, the study doesn't just map out the problem, it actually points toward a solution. It's basically a call to action to move from just talking about abstract ideas to actually building concrete tools. The paper argues that to bridge these gaps and unify the field, we have to move beyond just talking about risk and start measuring it. They propose a clear, quantitative framework built on 4 essential pillars that, in theory, you could apply to any AI system. First up, security. You gotta start here, right? This is the foundation. An AI system is pretty much useless if it's not robust against cyber threats or malicious attacks. We need a way to measure and guarantee its basic integrity before we can even talk about anything else. Second is accuracy. Now, this sounds obvious, but it is so critical. If an AI gives you the wrong answer, it's not just unhelpful, it can be actively dangerous, whether that's in medicine, finance, or even just navigation. We need to be able to measure and trust that its outputs are consistently reliable. Third, we have fairness. And this one goes right back to that gap we were just talking about. If an AI is trained on biased data, guess what? It's going to produce biased results. To prevent that, we need concrete tools to measure and prove that its decisions aren't discriminating against anyone. And the fourth and final pillar is explainability. We simply cannot trust a black box. It's just not an option. For an AI to be safe and for anyone to be held accountable, we have to be able to look under the hood and understand how it reached a decision. Without that, there's no real oversight. And this whole analysis leaves us with one final and pretty provocative thought. The research boom shows we're finally paying attention, and this 4-pillar framework gives us a path forward. But it all comes down to a race. Can we develop and implement the tools to measure and manage AI risk faster than we're developing new, more powerful, and potentially more dangerous AI? The answer to that question? Well, it's going to define our future.